This is a ManeHustle Media podcast.
Yo, this is Sharmane from the Single Simulcast. And when I'm not making you laugh or making up parody songs, I'm kicking back, listening to Militantly Mixed.
Hi, and welcome to Militantly Mixed, a podcast about race and identity from the mixed race perspective. I am your host, Sharmane, aka Mixed Girl Maine. And today we're going to do something a little bit different. I'm actually going to speak at the end of the episode because some of the information that I need to share would be spoilers for what gets revealed in the episode. So I'm going to ask that you stick with me through the conclusion of this interview, and then I'll pop back on and do my Sharmane thoughts. Before we do that, though, I just want to share the topic of conversation today. We are going to be covering the topic of transracialness. And this is a term that has been wildly misused in the media over the last couple of years, thanks to one Rachel Dolezal. The term transracial means a person of ethnic group or culture who is adopted and raised by people from a different ethnic group and culture. And that is exactly what we're dealing with today. What transracial does not mean is a white woman who's pretending to be black, culturally appropriating and benefiting off of that cultural appropriation. That I'm calling transracial. And I do talk about this quite a bit on other shows that I've been on, including my own show, Blurred Comics. I have a whole episode about it, but that's not what we're going to talk about here. What we are talking about here is the transracial experience, which I think is an important aspect of mixedness because we're talking about people of a different race being raised by people of a different culture. And there is mixedness in that. And it just so happens that my guest today is also mixed race in addition to being transracial. So it's a little bit extra of a element of the mixed story going on there. I don't want to get too far in. I'll let the episode speak for itself. My guest today, his name is Jesse Daner. He is a half black, half Mexican man from San Diego who was adopted and raised by a white family. He does have an adopted brother who is black as well, but like I said, primarily raised by white people in a white culture. And his experience is very unique because of that. And it's also unique because of who he is. So without further ado, we're going to jump into the episode. It is a little bit of a longer one because the topics that we discuss, we haven't dealt with on this show yet, and I thought it was important to leave as much of that in there as possible. So please stick with me through this episode, and then I will pop in at the very end to share my thoughts, but then also share a little bit of information that Jesse has told me it was okay for me to share at the end of this episode. So without further ado, here is my discussion with Jesse Daner. So we are back for another episode of Militantly Mixed. My guest this week, I'm excited about because your story is a story that I didn't even know I really super wanted. I wanted somebody with a similar experience, but I didn't know how badly I wanted it until I talked to you. So I'm so glad you are going to shine a light on mixedness that we have not dealt with on this show yet. And I'm very excited. So my guest this week is Jesse Daner. And you are an entrepreneur. You are out there doing big things, fun things that I'm so excited to get into. So why don't you introduce yourself to the audience, let them know about you, and then we'll talk about your ethnic background and your upbringing, and we'll get into it.
Awesome. So my name is Jesse Daner. I am 29, and I am from San Diego, California. Youngest of 5 boys. Just graduated college a year ago from SDSU. Go Aztecs. Yeah, I'm just a normal guy in this world, but I have a pretty interesting story.
Yeah. So one of the topics that I had tried to find people, so the show's been running for about 5.5 months, but about 6 or so months ago, I had posted something on a bunch of different mixed race Facebook groups that were trying to cover all of the different areas of mixedness that I sort of was either a part of the experience, had a cursory knowledge of, or just like knew it was a thing and wanted to talk to somebody because I like to be exposed to education that I don't have access to. And one of those topics was about the transracial experience, which is for everybody out there who thinks it's about pretending that you're one race that you're not. What it actually is being of a ethnic group and adopted and raised by people of a different ethnic group and raised within their culture, you are not only mixed race, but you are also a transracial person. So let's get into that. Let's talk about your childhood and your upbringing and everything.
Awesome. So all my life, being Black and Mexican, I've not only stood out having a white family, the classic phrase of being whitewashed has always been thrown around. So I'm one of 5 boys, but I'm really, me and my brother, Joey is his name. He was adopted as well, but he was born in 86. So he's 86, I'm 89. And the rest of my brothers grew up either in North Dakota or London. So, it's just been pretty interesting growing up with, being 2 Black boys, adopted by a white family, living in a predominantly white neighborhood and community in North San Diego. So it was really interesting that me and you touched base. And I, first talked to you and I told you I'm Black and Mexican, but I was raised by white people, and you gave me that term of being trans-ethnic. And the only way I can relate to that is I always tell people I'm the color of water, because I was never, growing up, I was never quite Black enough for Blacks. I was never quite Mexican enough for Mexican, and I'm not white enough for whites. Yet I can assimilate and I can move and switch dialects between these groups. I can use my interview voice, my voicemail voice, when I'm around white people, and I can speak Spanish around Latins, which I love. And then if I need to, dial it up for Black people, I can always get into that dialect and, use slang and stuff like that as well. If people really talk to me, they're like, well, what are you? And I always loved that question when people ask me what I am, because, technically we're all the same race. We're part of the human race, which is great. But so, yeah, part of my experience, just, being born in 89, my whole life, not my whole life, but, once it became apparent, I asked my mom, my adoptive mom, Sally, I asked her, if she'll let me know who my biological parents are. And, like most parents, she was like, I'll tell you when you're 18. And I turned 18. She's like, I'll tell you when you're 21. And then I turned 21. And then she's like, I'll tell you when you're 25. I turned 25. And then she finally said, I'll tell you when you graduate college. And that was the last one. And I did it. And the day I graduated, or the day after, she handed me a card, and it had, the most beautiful sentiments. She'll always be my mother. She loves me and I love her. But it included the name of my biological parents, which I was unaware of. So it was really, really cool. So I knew my biological parents' names. I knew they were Sonia and Anthony. Technically, I would be if I was still a Sonia, I'd be Sonia Perez. So I'd be Jesse Perez. And that was the only thing I knew. And then from there, I started Facebook searching. So I searched them and I found my biological father's family. And they all live in Temecula. And if you know anything about Southern California, Temecula is on the other side of Camp Pendleton, just about, and or at least on the east side. And Oceanside's not too far away. So they, I literally grew up maybe 30 minutes away from my biological dad's family, and I didn't even know it. And I have friends that go to the college that they go to, and friends that live out there. So I met them, and it was really life-changing, because I realized that, if I would have stayed with my biological family, at least my dad's side, I would have been one of 6 kids in a household, and, not a big household. I've been sharing, and my life would have been way different. Yet when I was adopted, I was one of 2, and I have all these opportunities and chances and just things I don't think I ever would have had if I would have stayed with my biological dad's family.
Yeah.
Just not bad. It's not bad. It's, just something to think about. So then, which fast forward to 2018, here we are. My mom, God bless her, she advised me to take the 23andMe, which I did. It was really, really interesting, because then it showed me really, really like what I share blood with and where they could be from. I knew I'm Black, of course. That's the first thing you can see to the eye. But I have always felt closer to my Latin side. So it was really cool to see just, okay, you share blood with these people and it could be here. And then a friend of mine advised me to do the ancestry test. So I took the ancestry.com, the DNA test, and that one was a little better than 23andMe, but where it differentiated was it connects you with the people that are already in that system, and it tells you, hey, you guys are related or possibly related. So I remember it like last week I took it, and or not last week, I took it last week. I got the results, and it was at 2:00 in the morning. I got the results, and I couldn't sleep after that, and I had to be up at 10. So I slept or tried to sleep, and I woke up at 10, and I was taking a trip with my mom, my adoptive mom, all the way to Big Bear to check out a summer camp for my business. And before we leave, I sent out a message to this the only person that it says I matched with, which her name was Nicole. So it says, hey, it says you might be matched with this woman. It says first cousins or closer. And I was freaking out. I was like, there's no way this could be possible.
Yeah, because that's close to immediate family. That's crazy.
And it changes, like it it's pretty crazy because your life changes, within an hour, an email.
Yeah.
So it was unreal. And as soon as I, got into the car with my mom, I not only started looking, and it said like, chances are that I am from, like I share blood with people from Chihuahua or Durango, Mexico, which not only gives me, a specific location, but it helps me be able to tell myself in a different way to people, which is great. So I was putting around there, and then I came across the DNA matches, and like I said, it showed me, I think, about 400 people, but the only closest match I had was this woman named Nicole. So I click on it, and it says, first cousins or closer. And without even thinking, I message her and it says, hey, my name's Jesse. I'm from San Diego. Are you in San Diego? It says that we're possibly related. And then I sent that. And then I, just decided to be a little more investive. And I clicked on her profile and got a little deeper, and her bio read, hi, my name is Nicole, and I was born with the last name Perez, and I was adopted in San Diego. And I was like freaking out. I was like, that seems very, very unreal. And not only that it says that we're possibly first cousins or closer, she was born with the same biological last name as I know my biological mom's name is. So I did what any normal person would do in this day and age, and I Facebooked her. So I just jumped on Facebook and Facebooked her, and she came up, and she was in San Diego, and I'm obviously in San Diego, and I messaged her, and I asked her, I was like, hey, Nicole, this is really random, but do you have Ancestry.com? And this was all, we'll say, I think the timestamp on my phone says 10:35. So I'll read you the conversation that we had on Facebook Messenger, and then, tell you how we now are friends or now family. So Awesome. So, yes. So as we're driving up to Big Bear, you can't really get service on the way down the mountain. So I sent these up the mountain, and then we're on the mountain. We kind of did our tour. And then as soon as we got down to the mountain, the bottom in San Bernardino, near Redlands, my phone started going off. So I sent this question to her, does she have Ancestry.com? And then we get down the mountain at 2:35, and she responds, and this is what she said. She said, I do have Ancestry.com. And then she wrote, wow, extremely confident that we're first cousins. That's what the website says. So I responded, yes. And I was like, wait. So I am adopted too, and I was born with the last name Perez. And she wrote back, that's crazy. Do you have any idea what your biological mom's name is? So I said, yes, I do. Sonia Perez. And yours? And then I wrote, I believe she has a twin too, which I believe had babies on my birthday. With my biological father's name is Anthony, but I've never met him either. What I do know is my biological father's best friend and my biological mom's twin had a baby together. And all of this took place where I was born in Chula Vista, San Diego. This is what my adoptive mom has told me. And then I asked her when her birthday was. And Nicole responded with, my biological mom's name is Sonia Perez. And I'm aware that I had two older siblings, a sister and a brother. And she said her birthday was 1991. So I wrote back, that is so crazy. My birthday is August 17, 1989. I'm just in a little shock because I never knew if I had any siblings until I came across my biological dad in Temecula, his family at least. And then I asked her when she was adopted. So then she wrote back, my records tell me that I have a brother who was born in August 1989, but I have down he was born August 18th and his name was Anthony, and I was taken away at birth, is what she said. So she was taken away at birth. And I was like sitting with mom, and kind of stumped me. And I'm telling my mom all this as she's driving, and she's going back and forth. And as we got to this point, I told her, I told my mom, and I asked her, when was I adopted? And my mom was like, Jesse, you were adopted at 3 weeks old. And when I got you, I had to change your name from Anthony to Jesse. So my name was Anthony Perez when I was first born, which is crazy. Crazy. So I wrote that to her, and when they first called me, and then Nicole wrote back. She said, my adoptive mom says that my that Sonia was able to keep her younger brother. She had a son after Nicole, and she was able to keep him. So freaking out a little bit, I wrote back, they called me when I was born. My name is Anthony. And then she writes, do you have any pictures of your biological mother? And I wrote, no, I do not, sadly. Do you? My adoptive mom tells me I have an older half sister on my mom's side, but I don't know anything about her. I have my birthday certificate and I've met my biological father's family, and they have some connecting stories about my biological mother and father, such as Sonia having a twin, or my biological dad's sister getting incarcerated with my biological mom's sister. So those are the only things I knew. And then Nicole wrote back, she said, I do have a picture. Crazy thing is, was a probation officer, and Sonia Perez was one of her cases, and she kept the photo for me. And I wrote, no way. I've never seen Sonia before, not even a picture. So yeah, my whole life, I've never seen any picture of anybody that's ever been related to me, or I've seen one picture of my biological father, but he is still incarcerated. So it was probably an old picture. And then Nicole writes, your biological dad doesn't have any. And I told her, my biological father told me that they tried to fight for me for custody battles. But at that time, my biological father got incarcerated. So that custody battle ended. So I stayed with my adoptive family. And then Nicole wrote back, I'm aware Sonia has a twin. She also had her children taken away and put up for adoption. And then she asked me how old I was at adoption, how old I was ever, when I was adopted. And I told her 3 weeks. It's so crazy. So at this point, I'm sitting with my mom. And there's one thing that I mentioned to you that I've known about myself that my mom told me that was very personal, which I'll share. I don't have a problem with it.
Okay.
It was just at this time with my mom, I was trying to figure out, how do I ask Nicole this question, without being too intrusive. Right. And as I'm thinking it, she writes, I hate to be intrusive, but were you born with drugs in your system? And that really got to me, because not only was that the question I was about to ask her, that answer to that question was yes. So how does this person not only know to ask this question, but she knows, it blew my mind.
Yeah.
So I wrote back, Nicole, I know we don't know each other, but I adore you. I was debating on how to ask you the same thing, because the answer to that question is yes, I was. I was born with PCP or cocaine in my system. And she writes back, the records that I have say that my brother was born with PCP and cocaine in his system. And so did she. She had that same thing, which is the reason why me and her were given up for adoption.
Right.
So, so that's
it
pretty much how our conversation
just as
went.
Crazy to hear it the second time, even though you and I have spoken already. It just rocks me. And I'm not even a part of your family, but it just rocks me that this is the experience that you have to find a biological sister and all that. It's so crazy. Yeah,
it was really, really, I lost for words. And after that, that's kind of where the conversation, I don't need to read the rest of it. It just, we kind of went back and forth, and then we decided that we were going to meet. So we met the day after. We had coffee and down here in Seaport Village. And it was, we already did the hard part, meeting up that first time was the hard part. But as we're sitting there having conversation, we sat there for definitely easily over an hour, probably I think 2 hours. And multiple times through this, as we're sitting there, we just kind of, sat in silence and just stared at each other, because, we share, just the slightest things about each other, like our eyes have the same, or, it was crazy to meet somebody that we share this experience over. And not only we were both adopted, it was just the way that we were adopted. And so we met up, and Nicole has this narrative, kind of like a script of what a social worker would write about somebody that is one of their cases. And it was so cool to meet and to see this. And she let me read it. And it was like I said, a narrative of not only of my biological mom's life for the most part, but, Nicole's life. And it mentions me, how I'm like, just kind of like a cameo character, in her life. But the part that I was is so pivotal and so crucial. So what we put together was Sonia was not only born and went to school here in Logan Heights, like near where I live right now. So not only do I live like 5 or 10 minutes away from where my biological mom, ran the streets as a kid, but, she went to middle school around here and she never went to high school. And she had her first run-in with the law at 15. And what we put together was Sonia had her first kid in 1988. And her kid, that would be my older sister, Karina, I think her name is. And then Sonia had me a year after in 89. And both of us, me and Karina, were given up for adoption. And then she had Nicole in 91. And then Nicole was given up for adoption after some very, very troubling things with Sonia's family and losing a sister due to drugs and, them coming into that, the police coming into that and seeing that, that there's a baby on site and that's not a livable situation. And then 2 years later, Sonia has another boy that we don't know, but she was sober at the time. So Karina, me, and Nicole were all born with PCP and cocaine in our system, one or the other or both. So all three of us were, taken. And then Sonia's sister as well, she had kids and they were taken as well. And she has a twin. Her twin's name's Miriam. So Miriam's kids were given up as well. And so we just kind of sat there and realized that this is not only a piece of puzzle for my life, but it's a huge piece for Nicole. And, neither of us had a younger sibling that we could, really, really connect with. I'm the youngest of my family, and she has 2 younger brothers with their special needs. But, you can't really have that conversational that you can have with, a younger sibling. So like I told you, it was so crazy. What's really crazy is how parallel my life and Nicole's life is.
Right.
Is my mom. Yeah, my adoptive mom worked with special needs kids for 30 years. And my brother's name is Joey, and he's a police officer. And Nicole's family, most of them working police officers. She has a younger brother named Joey who is also adopted. And then Nicole works with special needs kids here in San Diego. And it's like she's on the board for a nonprofit. So she's a teacher at a school. Yeah, so it's unreal because, we're so close to each other. And we were laughing because she bought tickets to a beer festival that my sister company, a friend of mine here on Sit, they're hosting, and she's going to that. And that's the only beer festival this month that I'm not going to. Otherwise, we would have crossed paths there. So it's, the universe is putting you in places and having you cross these paths with people, whether you believe it or not. If Ancestry.com didn't bring us together, this beer festival, sooner or later would have.
To think, especially since you're just at the beginning of getting to know each other, that you don't even know all of the other things that you share, that you have in common. You're just barely scratching the surface of it. And to have so much in common already it's weird because all of the things are nurture based, but you almost want to wonder if there's something nature based to it because you guys are actual siblings. Like it's wild. And so what, like when we spoke the other day, I had gotten off the call with you and I just like high energy kind of tried to explain to my husband what had happened because he similarly is adopted and raised by white people, but he's half white and half Arabic. But his biological mother is the mother he was raised with. His dad, he did not know until he was an adult that was not his biological father. He found that out as a teenager and then forgot, like as a young teenager, and then forgot and then had to be reminded when he came of age. And I always could tell because I met him when we were 15. And I could always tell he was a different race, but he was like, no, I'm white. My parents are white. I don't know. Later on in life, I found his biological father and we met him. And I didn't really see much shared stuff between them. But when we met his biological father's other children, I saw a lot of similarities between my husband and his half-brother, his younger half-brother. The way they walked, their hands were very similar. They have a mole in the same exact spot on their face. Like really weird things like that. They actually resemble in a way that my husband doesn't resemble his white brothers that he grew up with. And that was a whole nother thing. The fact that he had white brothers and him and his sister were brown. And I'm like, how do you not know? But, if you're raised by white people and no one tells you you're different, like you just think that's what they think. So, I was like trying to talk about like, look at how different this whole thing could be. Like, this is your version of it, but this is his version of it. And, I was talking about you, and like, I've been thinking about you a bunch since we talked, because there's so many aspects of your life that, ways in which tragedy put you in a very lucky situation almost, but then, you still are absent from your, all of the cultures that you are mixed with. And so you have to almost do the work yourself to expose yourself, but you still have this loving family that took care of you and nurtured you and helped you to know who you were. Like, there's all these things about you from what little I know about you that is so, I can't even think of the word that I'm feeling. Just like, it's wonderful that you have the people that you have, and now you get a chance to connect with your biological sister, and who knows where that's going to go for you in your life. It's just like, I don't know. I was overwhelmed by being just a stranger that you told the story to, and I can't even imagine what it must feel like for you. A million times as crazy as it feels to me, possibly.
I know as I was going through it, I told someone that it was, as I was sitting there and she asked me that question, if I was born with drugs in my system, it felt like someone had just turned on a faucet, and I was crying as hard as not even like tears of sadness. It was like a relief, like a sigh, like a sigh of relief. And that I've met someone with this shared experience that you couldn't write. You could write it now, but like you couldn't write this in a movie. It was unreal. It's just her response to how she feels towards our biological mom to mine, and it's just kind of like, and I mentioned it earlier. Like I feel so connected to my Latin heritage, and yet this is I don't want to say it's proof, because there's always proof. I didn't need proof, but this is proof. Like, no, I share. Like, you stand next to this person, we are definitely from the same tribe. And I think my adoptive mom put it in such a good way, and she said, the only reason why this works now, not only reason, but one of the reasons why it works now is both of us, me and Nicole, have had really good adopted families, and one of us wasn't better than the other. And so it didn't feel like, someone lucked out more than the other, and we're in a great equally position in our life. Not one of us is more off than the other. And there was something I said earlier that when me and you talked earlier that, has to be mentioned, like me and my brother being raised in a family that is white, and I mean white, like we're from Montana, North Dakota, like pioneer big sky states. And the reason why it works is hats off to my mom in 1986, driving from the top of the United States to Tennessee and then back to adopt a fully African American son. My brother, and he was like a bear cub, like he had big paws as a kid, like he is 6'5". He had we always told him, like, if he when he puts his hand in like a fist, it's like 5 hot dogs in one bun. It's like his hand is so big. And so it's, hats off to her. She, dealt with a lot of racism from the 86 to 89, and then moved to California and adopted me. And then obviously, imagine my mom's story, and then tailor it to my story. And then, it's uncanny. But one of the things that the adoption agency told my mom when she was picking up my brother from Tennessee was they almost didn't let her take him, because everybody was so scared. They were scared of the idea that if you take a black child, you raise it in a white household, he's going to lose himself. He's not going to learn this culture that has been stripped of, African Americans in so many ways. And my mom, believed that and she understood that, but she didn't understand what it meant until my brother was she didn't understand fully until my brother came home one day as a kid, maybe 5 or 4, and told her that he wanted to be a firefighter, but he didn't think he could because he'd never seen a Black firefighter. And I think that rings true, and it's why I don't get mad when we had that whole Black Panther argument, but it's just that's the point. Like, so many kids, they didn't think they could be president. They didn't think they could be Captain America. They didn't think they could be Superman, because there's no strong Black men portrayed, and that we don't see ourselves in the media like that, and it's hauntingly true. And then how kids, they'll believe it, they see it, they'll believe it. And if no one's around to convince them, unless they do the head or heart work, they're going to be stuck into these roles that are pre-assigned to them based on their looks,
Yeah.
It's uncanny, it's very uncanny. And we talked earlier about how just me being Black and Mexican, there's a culture in that. There is a huge culture in that. And it's one of the first mixed races that we have that we can, put to date, put a name on it, was slaves, interacting and mingling with indigenous, because the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And like I told you, the state of Guerrero in Mexico is named after Vicente Guerrero, who was African, who was a mixed, half Black, half Mexican, and second president of Mexico. And it's not erased from their history books, but it's not something that they openly teach and talk about. And, there are pockets of Mexico that have the biggest Afro-Mexicano population of over 100,000 people. And it's, they're still kind of like the taboo part of Mexico, which is crazy, because I think, it's how did that happen? The story of these places, these pockets, how they got such rich, vibrant population was slaves escaping from captive and they found haven here, or a slave ship crashed off the shores and they all swam the shore and they just kind of lived there. So whatever the story is, because we won't know because it's written by their winners' history. Regardless, the point is you have these Afro-Caribbean Latino descendants that are thriving and making this culture it should be a culture and it should be a country in its own. Just imagine the food, the music, the love that would come from that. Because, Black people, a Black household is filled with love. A Latin household is filled with love with terms of endearment. You put those together, I mean, you might be partying with a Corona and a piece of fried chicken till 6 a.m. It's just great, So I full-heartedly am a very proud African Mexican American man. And now that you taught me even something about myself. I just thought I was Black and Mexican the whole time, but this idea of being raised in another race's household when I'm already dual, mixed race, but then being raised, that's a whole another layer, and the thing that I would like to definitely dive into, because Nicole, she was adopted by a Mexican family, so she's Mexican, she's adopted by a Mexican family. So it's just that difference, and I'm out of me, Karina, and then our younger brother, I believe I'm the only one that's mixed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that would be an interesting discovery too. What I do, and I hope that as you go on your journey that you and I can check in on this, so that I either my own selfish curiosity or being able to show other people through the show. My curiosity about you as you're unpacking the transracial or trans ethnic side of you is, I'd like to know, a question that comes up a lot with especially my white passing mixed race guests, is that they don't always feel that they have a seat at the table. They feel even less like they have a seat at the table because they don't want to take up the space of and I'm using quotation fingers, real person of color, in terms of diversity hires or whatever, just having a voice to talk about issues and things like that as a person of color. And what I like to understand is flipping it, is being a person of color that is adopted by white people and raised with a white culture. What is their voice and what is their, and another quotation finger saying, permission to have a seat at the table in terms of, are they equally allowed to own a certain amount of whiteness, even though ethnically they're not white, culturally there is whiteness there. So I would definitely like to check in with you as you are going through that, because I want to understand all aspects of mixedness, but I think that's a very interesting part of the whole pie of what we are, is that, I am a believer that we should have a voice in all aspects. Yes, I don't have the experience of a full monoracial Black person or a full monoracial Japanese person or a full monoracial white person, and yet I have all of these influences both in my blood and in my cultures. So do I have a space to go to England, say, because my grandmother is British? Can I go there and insert myself as a Brit, even though I'm not fully a Brit? You know, do I have, like, you grew up around white people, you have white people raising you. Do you have a voice in whiteness because of your upbringing?
That is very interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting topic. Because
I would say that you do because you were around it, but what is the world going to do to us? You know, this is something that I want to figure out. I want to unpack it.
Yeah. No, I. It's interesting you say that because on a completely unrelated note, I mean, I have, at times I think like someone once told me, if you're, for ladies at least, and this is taken with a grain of salt, to be on the cover of a newspaper or cover of a magazine, it's kind of that picturesque, the lighter this, you want a light-skinned girl, dark-skinned guy, or vice, right? Like it's never dark and dark, and it's part of that process of assimilation, that's why, I want you to marry a white man, and, he has a good job. He's going to, provide for you. That's
right.
Most minority families, their parents, that's what they preach. They don't say, bring home a black guy, they don't say that. So I've always at times, think like it's really interesting because I am seen as a black man, but I do have, like I said, if you look at my household, I have more privilege than a lot of my white friends. I have, a place to live, a steady, no bad credit. I don't have a baby's mama. I don't have these typical stereotypes that people place on black people.
Right.
But I guess in less words, I feel like at times I look at like how I wonder if women would look at me as a white man, standing next to a picturesque, obviously not picturesque because of my skin color and all that and tattoos, but it is interesting. I have thought about like what is the difference between me and a white man that in this case women are looking for, or it's if people look at me, it's always the skin color. It's always like you must have family. It's like really that's so crazy. Like it's crazy, which it doesn't eat me up inside. But one thing that you were saying that touched on is it's not that I feel like I have a voice for whiteness. If I can get that spot at the table, it's almost more of like, how do I have to convince people that I have a voice for being Mexican? If I go to Mexico and insert myself as a Mexican, a Latino Mexican, like you said, and then even more, like I cannot tell you how many times people have asked me, at least that Black Lives thing, when Black Lives Matter, like they asked me, like, how do I feel? Like, and that's like, wait, you're asking me how I feel, why Black Lives Matter, like I'm the spokesman for my race. When, like we discussed, I'm coming from a white household. So it's like, I felt like Kanye West. I mean, like, what does Kanye West know about George Bush that we didn't know? Why was he the spokesman? So it was just, it's crazy because I don't really feel like I have a voice for like whiteness. I've never really had a problem with that. When I sit down, it's I walk into a room and it's full of white people. It's my multiracialness and what I know about being my childhood and what I come from. It to me gives me a leg up. It kind of makes me feel like I am different and kind of a commodity. But then when I go and talk to Mexicans or Latinos or African Americans, I feel like I kind of have to, I don't want to say work harder, but work harder to prove that I am part of that. Because, if you dive in and dissect it, my white household, I wasn't raised with those cultures. So, like you said, everything I know about Latin culture, or everything I know about Black culture is, mostly what I picked up from friends, family, not family so much, but friends on the street, social media, how people treat me. You know what I mean? Like I go on the stores and I've had times where people follow me down the aisles and I'm like, are you really? Like I'm telling you, I have so much, I feel like I really do feel like Ned Flanders or like, like a really like sometimes a high, like an overbearing white person because I'm like, dude, who are we following? Are you following me? Right. It's me. Like,
like, don't you know, that's a weird thing about like this mixed visibility and even maybe compounded with your adopted culture too, is that I know a few people that have that transracial upbringing where some folks that were adopted during the sort of wave of adopting South Korean babies. So I knew this one woman who was of Korean descent. She was adopted in Korea, and so was her brother, her non-biological but adopted brother. They were adopted by white people in Tennessee. And she says to me one day, I think I'm a white girl until I look at my face in the mirror, or until somebody does some racist gesture towards them. or towards her, she doesn't realize, like, she doesn't even identify her own face as part of her identity. She identifies her, like, Southern white upbringing as her identity. And people have to remind her that to the rest of the world, you look like an Asian. And she's like, but I'm not Asian, you know? And it blew my mind that she had this idea about herself, because for me, I can't separate my facial features from my identity. Like, it's a very much a part of my identity. So that's kind of why I had the curiosity about talking to people who had this experience, because I wanted to understand, like, how do you get to your identity when your face doesn't match your family? And so for you, not only being adopted by white people, but mixed race as well, aware of your mixedness, aware of your non-biological connection to the people that have raised you. And like when we talked, you were like, I'm just kind of this little nerd Ned Flanders guy, but they're seeing me as something totally different. Yeah. I don't even know what I want to say. It's just an area of, like, that we really need to learn about how to deal with people and drop all of those preconceived notions. It's like part of the reason why I'm doing this show. And oddly enough, I have a primarily white audience from what I've discovered.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a lot of mixed race audience as well, but I have a surprising, that's what I'll say, I have a surprising number of white audience. And the white people that do contact me after listening to the show will say things like, I didn't know I was making these mistakes. I wasn't aware. I thought I was colorblind. I didn't realize colorblind was racist, you know, things like that. And like, your show is teaching me these things. And so I wonder, like, what would it take for you and I to be able to walk around the world surrounded by people that aren't like us, and they would look at us and be like, oh, look at that, you know, fine young black Mexican man who was raised by white people, and look at that, you know, fine young black Japanese and British girl that was, you know, raised in the hood. Like, when can we walk around and just be our mixed ass selves without having to wear it on a t-shirt or have it on a wristband or put out a disclaimer or a caveat like, hey, I know my name is Sharmane Latrice Franklin, but when you see me, you're going to see a yellow girl. You know, like, what is going to be the thing that makes this possible for us?
I'm coming around the corner. Just be ready.
Yeah, like, the mixed folks are coming. The mixed folks are coming.
Yeah. Well, I think it's how do we get there? There's no answer to that. But, you know, for everybody listening, there's two things. One of them, I have to say it before I forget. I have a friend who is half black, half white, and you can tell he's troubled, you know, and I won't get into how we know he's troubled, but he's very, very troubled, to the point it comes off in toxic masculinity and in other ways as well. And we kind of dove into, you know, asking him, like, why is that? Like, why are you doing this? And he is torn apart. He has the internal struggle of his mixedness. And like I said earlier, my mixedness is a source of pride for me, and it's a source of strength. And I dig from it and dig from that well. Mm-hmm. And it seems like it's endless. But he, like, to the point where it's worrying, you know, it's worrisome. Like, it's this pent up, like, not having he doesn't feel like he has a tribe, you know, he doesn't feel like he belongs. And then it comes out in ways of, you know, toxic masculinity and just kind of being a jerk. And it's, you know, his girlfriend is white, and she's, you know, Texas white, and she just doesn't get it. And I'm like, it's dangerous. That's dangerous. You know, like, that's, you know, at the basic level of it is he feels like he can't belong, you know, because he's, you know, he's not black enough for blacks, and he's definitely not white. And, you know, he's too dark to be white. You know, he's the paper bag test. He doesn't pass, so he cannot pass. So it's scary. But so with that being said, just know that, you know, for all those listening, that, like, everybody's dealing through something, and I don't know how we're going to get to the point where you can walk down the street and be your mixed ass self. But, you know, like, this example is this guy, it eats him up inside.
My brother is similar to that.
It's sad. Very, very sad. And you know, it bothers me. It bumps me out.
Yeah. It hurts me too when I meet other mixed people that don't feel that sense of, like, I'm very empowered by my mixedness. I feel not really a specialness, but I feel like that I have this ability, because I had to learn to code switch because of all of my different cultures and things like that, that I have this ability to engage with almost any kind of person across the board. I mean, obviously there's going to be people, uber racist people or things like that would be very difficult, or if I have a language barrier or something like that. But because of my multiple cultural and multiple ethnic origins, I can plug and play to a lot of different groups and fit in. And I can also, but I can be othered the entire time that I'm also fitting in. And this, I think, is a unique thing that we as mixed people have. But through the show, it's been a mixed bag of people who like love being mixed and investigate it and use it as part of their power, as part of their personality and things. And then I have those folks too that come on and they're just like, they're troubled, like your friend, like my brother. They don't feel comfortable. Because they never feel like they have found their tribe. They are always in conflict with everyone, or they want to be a part of one of their ethnic groups, and because they're darker or because they're lighter or whatever, they can't get in all the way. And it hurt, like it almost like personally breaks my heart that they're feeling this way, and I want to put a Band-Aid on it and I want to help get them through it. And knowing that like that may not be their journey, and I shouldn't necessarily insert myself that way. And yet here I am still sitting there on on my mixed ass podcast talking about like, no, be empowered, do all this kind of stuff. It really does. It's so hard. And the flip side of that, though, is when a person who has felt that way, when I can kind of, in the softest way possible, bully them into talking to me about their mixed race experience, whether I do it for the show or not. And then they do kind of get a little bit more empowered. Then that part is the thing that, gives me the sense of joy of like, there's a reason why I'm doing this show and connecting with all these people, why you and I found each other, why me and this other person found each other. And now we can not only deal and unpack with the issues that we have. Like I said, sometimes the show ends up being like a therapy session for whoever I'm talking with, and for me as well, because I still have my insecurities and anxieties, even though I'm fairly confident in my mixedness most of the time. And I just love that through these narratives that everybody is telling about themselves from their own words, my other show that I produced, Black Radical Queer, Javi and Nicole, the host on there, she says our stories on our own terms. That's very much like the idea behind this show, is that, I'm here to help create a space so that we can tell our stories on our own terms, and like you coming out and just being like, look, this is my deal. Like, this is my whole deal. And you're not sad, or you're not ragey or angry. You're just like, this is the cards, and I'm living through it. I've lived through it, and I'm unpacking, and I'm still dealing, and I'm here, and I'm empowered by it. It just gives me like so much joy to hear, because parts of your story are very rough and very traumatic, and I have also a lot of trauma in my history as well, but to hear that like you can have this positivity and this relief in your voice when you're telling your story, I don't know, it just makes me feel so good. I feel so good hearing your story.
I'm glad to hear that. And it's, like I said, I'm very thankful to have come across your podcast. And like I said, I really just Googled mixed race podcast, because I listen to tons of podcasts, or at least a handful of them that I follow, everything from Breakup to My Favorite Murder. And this was just something I came across because it's something that's in my life very much. Obviously, it is my life. And right. Then it started, then I found this, and then it snowballed into my ancestry, and it just like, how I reached out to you, and then I told you, like, you wouldn't believe my story just got much more complex. Like, I know. It was like from one message to the other, it was like your life changed. Yeah, it was unreal. And it's crazy. The second thing, there was something I mentioned earlier, and I said I was going to say a second thing. Right. I didn't touch on it. It was about hair, and how not only how that's part of my, like, I've learned so much about my identity through my hair. Mm-hmm. And as I just now started getting it braided, so it's braided right now, and it's probably the 6th time I've had it braided, and I have a black woman from the islands. She braids my hair, and she's just, and she even married a guy from the island that's here like on refuge, and it's like looking at his culture and then looking at African American culture and then my culture. It's like that's 3 levels of blackness right there, like from the islands, from Africa, and all that. So it's I had this conversation in my kickball league. These people, my good friends, came up to me, and I think a lot of people who aren't black will appreciate this that are listening. She asked me, she's a white woman, and she's like, what do you call a black girl's hair? What word would you use to call a black girl's hair that's not offensive? And that first it hit me because I'm like, okay, well, once again, I'm not a black woman.
You're not the spokesperson.
Yeah, I'm not the spokesperson, but I realized I do get away with being able to tell a girl. I told her, I was like, tell her it's nappy, tell her it's kinky, tell her it's natural, and all those terms. She was like, no, I'll get killed for that. And I was like,
yeah.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, my bad. Yeah. Like I didn't realize I wasn't that until you reminded me. Like, oh yeah, you're right. Like I do pass for this, and I can. I mean, it's not, and I'm not passing. Dear God, no. I'm black by look. Like I've had. I think me living in Long Beach for a little bit and walking at
that's my town.
CSU Long Beach in the house, walking the streets. Me and my cousin were walking, a black guy walking, and a woman's walking the same street. She crosses the street. And I was like, it is 2:00 in the afternoon on a college campus. Like I'm black by association, apparently. So it's, but it's really interesting because how do you refer to a black girl's hair that won't get you shot?
So and when you told me that and you said nappy or kinky, I clutched my proverbial pearls because I was like, yo, don't tell a white girl to say that.
Tell her to say it. Let me know what she be. I'll help you out. No.
Yeah.
It's like natural. And then I told her natural, and she's like, well, what if I'm talking to a non-black person? And I told her that is when you have to take the time to educate that person. It's like there's no, okay, well, how do I say it? So there's no blanket term. These are ritual, kinky, or nappy. They don't get that. Take the time, take the extra minute or 2 to explain it to them and educate them. And like you said, a lot of white people write you and all that. And it's not offensive. It just blew my mind because like, here's a woman that really wants to know. And she just, she trusts me enough to be vulnerable, because race is very personal and people get really funky about it.
Yeah.
I don't want to be a snowflake. I don't want to come off and hurt somebody's feelings. And so it's interesting, and it was really interesting how interested she was in hair. Like my hair is different than hers. Like I don't even have black people hair. Like I have mixed hair. And everybody's like, me. So good. Your hair's so this and that. And I'm like, I guess.
Yeah, hair is a strange one because part of, and this would be because even though I look the way that I do, I have more of a black hood specifically experience. And so my thing is that even a white ally who has a curiosity about black hair, even me who is mixed and pale and doesn't have specifically black textured hair, I want to say it's not your place to be curious. I want to say, why do you need to know about this? That's kind of my gut reaction to it as sort of a black identified person. But as a mixed person and as a person who knows that even though it's not my job and I'm not getting paid to educate, if I don't take those opportunities when they arise, I'm either creating a worse problem down the line, or I'm, maybe even just putting that person in a risky situation because she's going to ask the wrong person or, whatever.
Sharmane said it was okay.
Like, don't say my name. But I was like, don't be telling everybody, don't put my name out there on the streets. But yeah, like I feel these both, like, it's both a gut punch and an opportunity. And so I try to take these moments and be like, well, look, let me explain to you why you asking that question will set somebody off and make somebody uncomfortable. And then, you kind of explain all of the different things that the traumas that we have surrounding our hair, the fact that no matter what, our hair is considered unprofessional. And yet, if the world was predominantly black and a white person walked around, with their stringy hair, we'd be like, ooh, that's unprofessional. Get an afro. What's wrong with you? If we flipped it, it would be a totally different thing. So it's trying to find these opportunities to be like, is it okay to be that curious? And if it is okay, what are we allowed to share with you?
Well,
These
right?
are the
What do I want to let, like, what do I want to give you from our culture? And, give you just enough that, that I'm not losing my culture, like culture appropriation, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, what am I giving you that's still going to be ours? Like, we're going to keep the N-word, y'all can't have it back. That's ours now. No, but what are terms that she can use? And I think it was just an area for me to, one, it was interesting because she wanted to know. And two, she has kids. So I'm like, hopefully this will pass on to her generation,
right.
and then their kids' generation. And then racism will be gone forever. No, but
in that
hair,
situation, I probably would have told her that you can just call it black textured hair and white textured hair and Asian textured hair, and just kind of call it the texture versus describing the different, because even black hair is not consistent. Like there's,
I think it was like she was looking for hair products. So if you go to a store and ask for hair product, like, what are you going to say? What's black texture hair product?
Yeah, that would be sufficient enough for somebody who is working in the kind of store to be like, here's the black hair section. So here's the thing. My mom is Japanese and white, but she is a hairstylist for exclusively black people. Like, she only does black hair. Actually, she has one Mexican client, and that's because that Mexican client has very curly, thick hair. It's not quite like black hair, but it's like hella thick and curly. And so she gets relaxers through my mom and stuff. And so, my mom can talk about it very clear and in a non-offensive way. She has a dedicated clientele that have been with her for 30 years and stuff like that. So I've always said black hair, and then it occurred to me once when I was talking to an Asian woman that was not from the States, and I said my mom's a hairstylist for black hair, and she goes, she only does people whose hair color is black. And it was a whole thing that was like, oh, actually do need to change how I say this for some people. So yeah, I include the texture because anybody who's in a hair store would at least know, or like a product shop would at least know, like, oh, there is actually different products for people with black textured hair. For mixed folks, though, there is a couple of different companies that do hair, that do have hair products specifically for mixed people. And I'm really, really hoping I can get one of the one or both of the owners on the show if I can. I have not found a connection yet, but there's a hairline called Mixed Chicks, and it is all kinds of products that are catered to different aspects of mixed hair. And so that's kind of dope that like that exists now. I was driving down the street in Los Angeles on my way to a job interview. There was a billboard, and it had what's her name? Kersey something. She's the mixed race girl that was in Dope, and
okay.
So she was on the billboard, and it had a hashtag like mixed my way or something, and it was Mixed Chicks hairline products, or my mixed hair story or something like that. And it was the first time in my entire 41 years that I saw mixed people being mixed on a billboard. That it wasn't like the token mixed person with a whole bunch of white people or whatever. It was just a mixed girl with her mixed hair on a mixed hair billboard, and it was amazing.
I think we had that discussion where it's like, even though if you're mixed, like I have to put you in some sort of box for my head to compute it, right? Either like Halle Berry or Barack Obama or Bruno Mars, like you're black or Mexican, you can't be both.
Right.
Like, and that's what blows my mind. And hair not only tells so much about it, like hair, I don't know if you realized, but African American black people's hair is the only hair that grows towards the sun. It grows up. No other hair does that.
That's an interesting way of saying it.
Right? I mean, really? Someone told me that, and I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Our chosen race. Oh, yeah. No, but really though, like I've changed the way I've thought, since I heard that, like we really only have the only hair that grows towards the sun. Like, and I don't know, like, so something you said was like, I used to like hair, right? I had dreadlocks, and as soon as I cut my dreadlocks, I got a job. Like, my hair wasn't appropriate. Black hairstyles are, they're very, you have to be this way, right?
You're right.
Keep it high and tight. But when people first got slaves, they got them from all over Africa. from tribe. They would capture people from different tribes that would never even meet, different languages, different currencies, and they would toss them in a boat together and expect them to find common ground, you know? But with that being said, a long time ago for hair, you used to be able to tell whether someone was single, what class they were in, if they have any people, you know, how many brothers and sisters. You could tell so much by someone's hair. And when they got us as slaves, they just take all the hair off. They're all the same. Shave them all off. Yeah. And if you look at it today, like that's scary still into our system. You know what I mean? Like you can't, if you want to express yourself through your hair, that's fantastic. But better hope you're going to be a rapper or something. Like you're not going to get, you know, unless you keep your really high. How long, you know, and how long it costs really expensive to get dreadlocks to keep them really nice and clean. Like not many people have that. So if you just think about, you know, being colorblind is not enough. It's because they're not acknowledging these differences like our hair.
Being colorblind is downright erasure, and it's a horrible practice, and it's one of those things that I know in white allyship, it's an attempt to be an ally, but really it's one of the worst things that they can do or say because they're trying to erase us to make us feel like them. And we don't necessarily want to feel like them. We want to be ourselves and express ourselves. I mean, imagine if nowadays we braided our hair with maps back to our home the way slaves did before they started shaving hair off. You know, like our hair told a story.
Exactly.
Before. And it, you know, and we're being told that now that's unprofessional, or, you know, but then at the flip side of it is when a white person appropriates a black hairstyle, then they're courageous or they're beautiful in some kind of way. And that discrepancy, even in 2018, is it's just so bizarre that this is a thing.
There's a book that I really would like to recommend for yourself and anybody listening that I read when I was in school. It's called Colorblind, and it's by a guy named Tim Weiss, and it's about the rise of post-racial politics and the retreat from racial equity. And it's told by a white guy, but he is, how I would put it, he's a white guy that I would invite to the family barbecue, for sure. He is so cool. And if you could just YouTube him or whatever, but like that, he really changed the way of thinking of like, don't be colorblind. Like you said, that's worse. You have to acknowledge these differences we have and then put that forth into what it is that we're moving into. Don't act like we're all the same, because we're not. Like, you know, none of us are the same. Even those that are the same color, same height, whatever. We're all different. So it's really, really good. I think I got to read it for like a sociology class, but that's and that gave me the idea of being in the color of water. You know, you put me in any surrounding and I can fit in, you know, I can definitely make it. And it's always amazing. I lived in Costa Rica, I lived in Panama, and until I speak, people think I'm one of them. You know, and once I speak, they're like, okay, he's not. And then I had a really good conversation with a woman in Panama during the time of the Las Vegas shooting about not only our you know, state of a country, but like, you know, just being racist. And it was unreal how people think, you know, they really only believe what they see on TV, you know, like whatever we show them, they think that. Like a lot of times I tell people I'm from California and they'll say anything from like, you know, something has to do with California, like Pamela Anderson or something like Baywatch. Like what? That's not even. That's
still
what it's
big
like.
everywhere else.
Exactly. Like, yeah. So it's like the blonde with big boobs. Like that's what people think California is. You know, it's crazy to me. If you ask me, like, no, California, Tijuana, Texas, Arizona, that's California. When I was born, it was Mexico. When I die, it'll be Mexico. As Edward James Olmos said in Mi Familia. Like, I don't know. It feels so indifferent living here in San Diego and being so close to the border and being mixed race. And I travel across the border quite often just for tacos. And to get a little culture and, you know, thankfully, knock on wood, nothing's ever gone bad, but it's, you know, the stigma that people have about, you know, what they don't know, you know, people fear me for what they don't know, you know, they just, until they get to talk and see that I'm like, you know, what we're doing right now, you know, I'm one person, you know, just another guy, And
isn't that the thing that sucks too, is that if people are just going off of sight and what we look like, and whatever their preconceived notions about that is they're missing a full ass conversation with the whole ass person, you know, like this amazing experience that they could have, but they've decided because of skin color or build or whatever that, I can't associate with you, or you're too dangerous to associate with, or whatever, to not investigate who this person could possibly be. You as well, you have this amazing adult adventure camp company and everything like that. You can expose adults to like childhood joy and like letting themselves go. But if they have some preconceived notion about people with black skin, they're going to look at you and be like, oh, no. Like, that's ridiculous. They could actually be exposed to something amazing if they just took a moment to talk. But yeah, I mean, I think that's what all this is about, is that we need to start communicating, engaging, and the biggest, or what I think is the lasting important aspect of this show, hopefully, will be creating a footprint of mixed race experiences, because I'm talking to people that have so many very different experiences that hopefully down the line, because they'll be online and hopefully the internet will never die and it'll be there forever, that people will say, oh, there were mixed people who had this experience one day. Because right now, we don't have those stories. We can't dip back very far. Like you said, history is written by the winners, and the winners weren't always the biracial or triracial or multiracial people. So I hope through this show and our continued conversations and things like that we start to build that bridge instead of walls.
I agree. I think a lot of racist things, I think, like, to me, in layman's terms, how racism is so easily happen. It's like, someone in your lineage or your lineage was, something happened, let's, for example, like your wife ran off with an Asian guy, and then it's easy to say, I hate Asian people, so I'm never going to do that, yada, yada, yada. And then it takes, time on for someone that comes along of that descent to do something to break that mold, you know what I mean?
Right.
And it's seen in so many movies, you know what I mean? Like, no, this black guy, I was robbed by a black guy when racism was prime, of course, right? Because we're pitted against each other. And now you're old and your son has a best friend, or your wife, your daughter's marrying a black guy. Like, you're going to hold these resentments with you, and carry them with you until someone comes along and disproves them, and like, remember the Titans. That was the whole thing. Like, that guy's whole family hated Superman. His whole family hated black people for whatever reason, because they're stealing your job or for whatever. And then he realizes, like, no, this guy's fighting. He's fighting for my life. He's saving my life. Like, regardless of my skin color, he has all the right to hate me. And then that's what changes people's things. And, we all find ourselves in that situation, girl, your boyfriend leaves you for a girl that's whatever, or your, guy's girlfriend leaves her for another guy. Like, it's very easy for people to, men will hold grudges, it's easy to create a stigma. And we don't,
women
we don't
hold grudges too.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's crazy, and I think that's one thing my mom's always been really great at, and she taught us, was it's not the color of somebody, it's not their, the creed, it's their humanity, what I mean? Like, how are they as a human? I think, you don't got to be white or black to be an asshole, you don't got to be a certain color. So it's...
Yeah, for real. So we are getting closer to time, so there's a couple things that I like to do to wrap up the show, but before we do that, I wanted to hear about your adult summer camp. Will you tell the audience about that?
After all this is being said, I've had a normal childhood, of course. And in 2010, I went and lived in Costa Rica, and I was out there for a little over half a year. And I was out there because not only was I on academic probation, I lost my license, and the state of California was not happy with me. So my mom was like, why don't you, do something productive with your time? Live abroad, teach English, or, shoot the shit or whatever. And a friend of mine who was a really good friend, Rory Graham, he ended up passing away. And he was one of the most phenomenal people I've ever met, and one of the first black cadets as a pastor at Army Navy in Carlsbad. And they're going to name a building after him, and he's going to be the first black cadet to have a building named after him on campus. But before he passed away, he mentioned me going to this company called International Volunteer Headquarters. So I just looked it up, and I ended up living abroad, teaching English based off of his recommendation. And I came back and had kind of a better direction on what I wanted to do. And in 2012, my childhood sister, a young lady that I grew up with in Oceanside and went to preschool together all the way through high school and community college. She ended up passing away, and her mother asked me to speak at her funeral. And I said, of course, Echo is her name. And Echo is very much like me. She was a social butterfly and knew everybody, and it was always the life of the party and loved looking her best. And as I was up there speaking, I just realized that all the people that I knew from her in connection to her and how many people knew me. And everybody from work to play to my ex-girlfriend at the time, her baby's daddy knew her, and everybody in between. And at the time I was looking at starting something that mattered with a friend. And we were looking at flag football, but he didn't want it to be co-ed. So we switched, we split, separated ways, and I came across dodgeball. And unbeknownst to me, I found out that not a lot of women like getting hit in the face with playground balls. So I had to find a different sport, and I came across kickball. And kickball is played in 32 states, including Alaska, and they play in the president's backyard, which there's a park back there. So I don't know about this president, but they play in old presidents' backyards. So with that being said, I looked from where I am in North San Diego, from Escondido to the coast of Oceanside and Carlsbad. And at the time, there was no kickball. So I started my league and started with 8 teams. And within a year, I ended up moving to Carlsbad and kicking it there. And we've had 24 teams, which is our highest. And then right now, our season has 15 teams on it. And there's 20 people on each team, all co-ed. So we play Friday nights. That was the first time I got my start. I've been kicking it ever since. We play 4 seasons a year. And while I started that, it definitely snowballed into what I do now, which is I make giant games. So I make giant Jenga, giant Connect Fours. I have a giant pool table that has soccer balls that you kick. I have giant beer pong, any kind of lawn game or old school child game like Mancala or Kerplunk. I can make it. So people started hiring me to bring them out to festivals. So I do a lot of beer festivals. I do weddings. I do birthday parties. I've done sororities and fraternities. And those were kind of separate, kickball and games. And then I came across this idea of doing team building. So if I have any gift besides woodworking and making things and making people happy, it is facilitating groups of people. I have a very slick tongue. Sometimes it writes checks that my ass can't catch, but for the most part, it does what it's supposed to do. And I started doing a lot of team building, corporate team building, and that's what led me to what we're at today, which is a 21 and up summer camp for adults. So it's a 4-day, 3-night, all-inclusive summer camp, but it's like a team building / like team Olympics. So you sign up and you get a color, any color you want, and then that's your team. And you guys will stay in a cabin. All your food will be provided. We have sponsorships from Pizza Port here in San Diego, and then we also have Naughty Barrel Brewing, any brewing company out here, honestly, because San Diego has so many. But we've had a liquor company that does our tequila, and then we have whiskey out there from Hannaberry. So all your alcohol is included. Your games are included, so you do anything from like a team Olympics. So you're competing against other teams in ropes course, mountain biking, and archery tag. So you get to shoot each other with bow and arrows, but it's safe. It's safe. The arrows have cotton balls on them, and you wear masks. It's more like a LARPing, like a cosplay type thing. So we have everything like that, and then you have pool time. We have a concert at night. We have a talent show. And then my personal favorite is we're going to have campfire stories. So we'll have somebody out there, hopefully a good podcast out there that'll be telling us some horror stories and some scary stories while being in the forest, because everybody knows you stay out of the forest. You don't want to get murdered. That's the best thing. So it's I'm not selling a product. I'm selling the nostalgic experience of how many of us, especially mixed race, how many of us didn't get to go to camp and be ourselves. Imagine going back to camp now and being your best self and wearing your onesie and going with your girls or your boys and being able to cut loose. And my mom went this past year and she won our costume contest. And my mom is 65 years old. So don't get it twisted. She's out there to pull up and wreck. But yeah, so I haven't worked a day in the past 5 years. My job, Echo Shepherd, that is her name. We are Echo Athletics. The camp is Camp Echo. Even till this day, Echo is helping me, connecting me to people that I never would have met. She's got me to work in Panama. We're starting a school out there. I'm very close with Echo's youngest sister, who was a newborn when Echo passed away. And I've never had, obviously I've never had a sister. So it's, and this girl is in love with me. She's smitten by me. And I am telling her about her sister that she'll never get to meet, and how her sister was mine, and it's crazy. It's my experience makes me tear up. That experience makes me tear up too, because it's, it's proof, it's people only die when you let them die. People are only gone when you let them be gone. Like, her sister's still here with us, and she has pictures, and I can tell her, like, this is how your sister was. Like, she illuminated a room, we walk into it, and, her unreal, very, very unreal on the whole situation. But like I said, I left my job at Adidas for 6 years to do this, and I graduated college, and my department would brag about me and tell students that, you could do this with your degree. And I always tell people, death inspires a lot of growth, and we all are connected by this thing of death. It's a cycle. So, that's the cool thing about this whole thing is Echo Athletics. Anybody I talk to has a story about someone they love that, is not with us. And it's always interesting. And I love hearing how they're doing their memory alive, if it's doing an ofrenda, or if it's doing a run for suicide, or, everything in between. I get paid to have people have fun. I think that's a great job.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Before we get out of here, a lot of what we talk about on the show does sometimes start in trauma, or trauma is a portion of our experience because of our identity quest and everything like that. So one thing that I want to do with everybody is find out, what is it about being mixed that you love the most?
Oh, I was going to say, if you're going to ask me how I survived, like, I survived. Why do you think you survived? I survived. No, what do I love about being mixed? That's a good question. Being put on the spot. Final answer. This is why I love being mixed. I love being mixed because life is like a Gatorade. You know what I mean? And if you think about, we all grew up with the red, the blue, the orange, right? The basic colors. They're not flavors, right? What flavor you want? I want red.
Mm-hmm.
Then something beautiful happened. Gatorade came up with these hybrid flavors. And one that is so popular in Latino Mexican culture is cucumber Gatorade. It's cucumber lime. And that to me is so, so crazy, because that is what being mixed is when two cultures come together and then fuse into something. And not only changes the culture, but it changes your food. It changes your music. It changes your people. It changes your language. And, that is monumental. That's how you can build empires off that. So like a Gatorade, it's the marrying of two very unique cultures and flavors that some people may say that they don't like, but if you try them together, it's the beautiful combinations. And that's what I love about being mixed is I am this beautiful mix of these cultures that built this country. They really did. They built this country. But I'm, just the idea of being creative and the Latin flair and the uniqueness of just being Black and the amazingness of the uniqueness of being white. And I love all that and mixed together. It's just made me who I am. And that's why I love being mixed is I'm not in one box, you know what I mean? I'm all the boxes, and I love it. I wouldn't trade it, wouldn't change it for the world, and I always tell people, like, I'm half Black, half Mexican. I could jump a fence, if I really need to. There's no fence, nope, can't jump. Like, no, like it's just so, it's beautiful. Like I fall in love with myself every day, just being mixed and talking to people and speaking Spanish to them. And then they're like taken aback, like, oh, like I didn't think that. And it's, the ability to surprise people every day, and because I'm not what they think I am,
Yeah.
I love that. I love being mixed because I'm not who you think I
am. Surprise! Well, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your experience with me and with the audience. Thank you for reaching out to me on Instagram. I just really appreciate that you found the show and that you participated so quickly as well. I am really grateful. But before we get out of here, why don't you tell everybody how to find Echo Athletics on social media?
So you can go to echoathletics.com for our website, or you can search us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and everything in between at Echo Athletics. Yeah, you can always come and kick it.
Cool. All right, so that was our episode. Thank you to Jesse for sharing his story. It's a pretty heavy story, and even though it is born from some tragedy, to hear his positivity and who he is as a man today is just amazing. I find Jesse very inspirational of a person to have interacted with. On this show, there is a lot of times in which we are dealing with trauma, or that we're focusing in on trauma. And not to say that every aspect of mixedness is traumatic, but there are aspects of mixedness that are, whether it's from our origins or whether it's from how people treat us because we're unique or we're different. Whatever it is, a lot of us do deal with a certain amount of trauma and bullying and pain. And you forget sometimes how resilient humans are, and that even when you come from a very traumatic situation, you can still grow to be a very positive and happy person. And I get that feeling from Jesse, that his origins are kind of grim. He had a mother that was addicted to drugs. He had a father that was incarcerated. He was adopted within 3 weeks. And so lucky that he ended up with a family that not only, took care of him and nurtured him as a man, but nurtured his other ethnic cultures as to the best of their ability, which I think is a unique experience for a transracial adoptee. As I mentioned, I know a couple people who have this experience, but not many. And so from my own experience of knowing a few transracial people, these people were always raised within the culture of the adoptive parents. So they were hardly exposed to people that were similar to them or people who were similar to the ethnic groups that they came from. And so with Jesse's family making that effort to try to show themselves people who were like them, I said that a little weird, but you get what I'm saying. I think is amazing, and credit to his family for doing that, because it seems from talking to Jesse that he is a whole ass mixed person. He understands his cultural heritages, but he also understands within what he grew up with that he is different, quotation fingers, than people of his same ethnic origins who were raised around people of their ethnic origins. So it was just great. It was great to have this exposure to something different than the typical topics of mixedness that we talk about on the show. And I encourage any other people who are listening who have a story, a transracial story, to reach out to me and come on the show, because, this is, again, we're not a monolith. Jesse's experience is going to be a lot different from another transracial person, just like my experience as a multi-ethnic, multicultural, multinational mixed race person is, So yeah, I'm in awe of Jesse. I really am. I think his positivity is very infectious. I felt great after talking to him, even though we talked about some dark stuff. He just oozes it. And even through Skype, I felt really connected to him, and I'm excited about his company. He mentioned Echo Athletics and his oversized or giant games and the kickball and the summer camp. If you do go to his website, Echo Athletics, or his social media, you can gain access to that as well. He said there is going to be discounts for Christmas break or the holidays for the summer camp. So check him out there and get access to those discounts beforehand. I think this idea is awesome. As a mixed race person, not only as a mixed race person, but like a kid who grew up in the hood. I didn't have summer camp. I didn't have access to these type of things. I was always sort of envious of my Jewish friends who would leave and go to Jewish camp or, band camp or, whatever different kind of camps people had. I didn't have access to something like that as a kid. And oh gosh, how amazing would it have been to have a mixed race summer camp when I was a kid? It would have been awesome. But like, I'm really into the idea of doing it as an adult. And I hope to get a chance to do that with Jesse's company, Echo Athletics. So check it out. See if it's something for you. I think this one's coming up in April. I think it'll be awesome. It sounds so much fun. Okay, so now going back to sort of the normal things that I do in the intros, sort of the business of having a podcast. I want to thank everybody who participated in the birthday fundraiser. We did top out at $215 for the birthday fundraiser, and that is slightly less than half of the goal I had for the soundproofing of my recording area. So it'll still take a few more months for me to raise the funds necessary to finish out, but at least we have a good foundation to get started, so that's amazing. And like I have said also, I've recently done so many extra interviews that I have content for months. And even after I get this soundproofing done, there's still going to be a few episodes that'll come out that have some lower quality or pops and clicks and things like that because my area is not very soundproof. And until I, quote unquote, burn off all of those interviews, I'll still be affected. The sound quality will still be affected by some of that. But I'm just grateful for the foundation that is now laid from the people who donated because it'll help improve the show that much more. And also the sharing and whatever is starting to work because we had an explosion of downloads this week. I don't know if it had more to do with the specific episode with Salam Yordan from Ethiopia or if things are just finally clicking into pace and people are sharing and getting exposure to the fact that we do have this safe space for mixed race people through the show. But last week that episode just bypassed my previously heavily downloaded episodes, number one, and number two, people are listening to a lot of the older episodes. So even episodes that are like 5 months old got an extra 10 or 15 downloads in the last week than they have been. I'll usually get onesie twosies on the older episodes, but we had some big numbers this week, and we're almost to 2,000 lifetime downloads, which for a really big podcast is not that great, but for something like this that is very niche and hard to find, that's amazing. 5 months and we're about to hit 2,000 downloads, and I'm just in awe of the experience itself. For me, how enriching it is. I hope it is for the audience as well. So please continue to share. We actually ended up in countries we've never been in before. We got downloads from Mexico and Chile and the Dominican Republic, from Burkina Faso, from Iran and Ethiopia as well. But also our guest was from Ethiopia, so that makes sense. So yeah, there was just this crazy amount of extra downloads this week, and I'm just so excited. I hope that we keep that going, and that by this time next year, we're at 10,000 downloads an episode or something like that. That would be, oh gosh, that would just be everything. So yeah, those are the two things that I wanted to talk about, at least in terms of the business of the podcast. But Jesse, again, I'm so grateful to him for sharing this story. And so, as I said, the show is still fairly small, even though we are growing, which is amazing. And this could be a shot in the dark, but it's worth a shot. You never know who's listening to the show. Earlier in the episode, Jesse talks about how when he and his biological sister, Nicole, met, they were sort of piecing together their history in terms of what information Jesse had and what information Nicole had. And they mentioned an older sister who had also been adopted out. So, my little appeal that I did talk to Jesse about to see if he was at all interested in me doing this. He said it was okay. If you are in the San Diego area and you are aware of a person whose name is Karina, or maybe was Karina Perez at the time of birth, who was adopted out near birth from a mother who was under the influence of drugs at the time, please share this episode with them. Perhaps they may be the older sister of Jesse and Nicole. Perhaps they would be interested in connecting with their biological siblings. I don't know. You just never know. It's worth a crack. So please share this information with them. If you are the person who happens to be their sibling, or you would like to see if you are and want to connect through the show, you can email Sharmane at militantlymixed.com. That's S as in Sam, H-A-R, M as in Mary, A, N as in Nancy, E. And just let me know that you think you know of or are Karina Perez, and I will connect that information back to Jesse and by extension Nicole. and perhaps a family could be reunited. But also make sure you check out Echo Athletics, because, you know, not only are we here to talk about the mixed race experience, but we're here to support mixed race creators and makers out in the world. I love when I have a guest come on with their music or a book or, you know, a company or something like that to pay attention to, because I'm the kind of person that likes to vote with my money if I can within the POC community. And, you know, if they're in the mixed community, even better for me personally, because I have a personal connection to that. So yeah, I think that's it for tonight. I'm just I'm just in awe of this show. I'm so grateful for the experience and the opportunities that my guests are providing me. And yeah, get at us. Come on the show. Let us know what your mixed race experience is. You can email me at Sharmane@militantlymixed.com. That's S as in Sam, HARM as in Mary, AN as in Nancy, E@militantlymixed.com. Or you can find us on our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook @militantlymixed. Share your stories. Let us know how you feel about the show. If there's a particular episode that connected with you and you want to reach out to that guest, you can send those messages through social media or through my email, and I will share them with the guests. And, you know, they can choose to reach out to you or not. It's entirely up to them. But I think that would be really encouraging for our guests to hear how people have connected to their shows. It has happened a couple times, and, you know, a lot of times my guests are surprised that people cared. So if you are listening and you do love the show and there are particular episodes that touch you, please feel free to message those guests through me and I will get it to them. And yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, thank you. Just thank you for this experience, because it's changed my life. It's just changed my life. And I hope that through listening to this show, you are also encouraged to do whatever the thing is that will change your life. I mean, I have craved something like Militantly Mixed for years, and it took me a while to get the courage to do it. And when I did do it, everything turned around for me. I really, really feel so strongly that I would probably still be sitting in my pajamas on the couch in the dark during the days because I was going through a really bad batch of major depression, and Militantly Mixed has dug me out of that hole. And I don't know why I'm feeling so reflective. Maybe because it's late at night, and maybe because it's coming to the end of the year. But yeah, it just means so much to me that I have this experience now through Militantly Mixed, and I am grateful, and I hope I'm not babbling too much. All right, I think I'm going to go ahead and say goodnight. But before I do, don't forget to be your mixed ass self. Night, y'all. Militantly Mixed is a ManeHustle Media podcast, produced and hosted by me, Sharmane Johnson. Music is by David Bogan, The One. And if you like what you heard on Militantly Mixed, please subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes and wherever you find your podcasts. ManeHustle Media. Turn your side hustle into your main hustle.